But it didn't matter anymore that they didn't believe. What mattered was that I believed I could make it. And I really did believe that more than anything else. I knew the next time that I saw Andrew was going to be stood on the quayside at the finish line in Barbados. A British national newspaper quoted me in their kind of quote of the week section as saying, it would be nice one day to be remembered as something other than the woman whose husband left her in the middle of the Atlantic. And then they had the cheek to write underneath it, by Debra Searle, the woman whose husband left her in the middle of the Atlantic. So I know I'm stuck with this forever now. And you know what? I'm kind of okay with that now. And I think that's probably because, if I'm honest, Andrew getting rescued is possibly one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Because it forced me to deal with changes that I would never choose, because I never would have chosen for Andrew to get off that boat. But we're all faced with circumstances in life, aren't we, that we would never choose. A parent dying of cancer, or having money struggles, or having a miscarriage, or, I mean, I could mention a million more things like that. We'd never choose for those things to happen. And we're left often, you know, with our hope in tatters, to try and find some way to pick ourselves back up and move on with life. By Andrew getting off that boat, I was forced to try and find strategies, techniques, to find a way to pick myself up and carry on. And I wouldn't have learnt that if he'd stayed on board the boat. And I know they work, because I've used them when my father died of cancer, when I've had money struggles, and when I had a miscarriage. So let me explain to you what I mean by taking you on this journey with me, which started here in this tiny little rowing boat, heading out into the middle of the Atlantic. I don't think the other competitors in this 3,000-mile race across the Atlantic particularly saw Andrew and I as a threat. And I think that's possibly because we were the only mixed-sex team in this race, but also because they learnt during this period in Tenerife that actually I'd never rowed before, so I could see why they didn't believe in us. But you see, I picked a really good partner in Andrew. He's 6'5", he'd rowed internationally. But on the first night, we had this massive storm, you know, the waves were breaking over us and the boat was completely out of control. And, you know, we realised we'd probably done completely the wrong thing by doing the majority of our training on the River Thames in London, because it just hadn't really prepared us for this at all. But in the chaos of that night, we made two really, really big discoveries. We discovered that I absolutely loved it. It was like the bigger the waves got, the more I seemed to love it. But we also discovered that Andrew has what's really hard to find a description for it, but it's like a really crippling phobia of open ocean. Over the next 7 days, Andrew's condition deteriorated really dramatically. And I guess I was left with no other option than feeling like I had to call for a rescue vessel. And Andrew was, you know, incredible during this period. He was so brave. And it left me with this impossible decision, though. You know, do I get off onto this nice big rescue vessel when it arrives, or do I stay out here alone? And the problem was that every time I thought about that option of carrying on alone, trying to finish it for both of us, this anxiety would kind of bubble up inside me. And these anxiety bubbles were things like, what if I get attacked by a shark, or if I get run over by a big supertanker, or if I get washed out of the boat by a wave, because I'd never swim fast enough to catch up with it, and then I'd just be alone in the water. They wouldn't be coming to get me. But then the only way I seemed to be able to burst those anxiety bubbles was by running this movie in my head, this scene from the movie when Andrew was going to be rescued. And it was this moment here. And I ran this movie over and over again where I could see them sailing off, and I'd just be sat there alone in this boat, just wind and waves and sky around me. And whenever I imagined that, I got to the point where I knew it so well. I rehearsed it so many times that I actually knew it as well as I know that scene from Top Gun. Yeah, because if you've ever seen that movie, you know that film, that bit in the film where Tom Cruise is singing "You've Got That Loving Feeling" to Kelly McGillis in the bar. If you've seen that movie, you can probably picture it right now, yeah? Those incredibly white, tight trousers he was wearing. And you know when all the other guys kind of join in the chorus, and you can almost feel Kelly McGillis's embarrassment at the situation. I knew this scene so well that I could feel it. Now, I think the other impact that running this movie had, though, was that it was like for me when I watch a scary movie, but for the second time. Because, you know, if you put a horror movie in and you press play and you start watching this thing, when you get to that really scary bit of the movie, you jump, don't you? It's designed to make you do that. But if you put the same DVD in again of the same scary movie and you press play and you start watching this thing, when you get to that really scary bit, you don't jump. Because you know it's coming. You're already in control of mentally and physically and emotionally how you're going to respond to that moment. That's exactly how it felt. You know, this moment, when I looked up at Andrew on that on the rescue vessel, I knew exactly what to do. And I didn't jump at the scariness of it all because I'd seen it all before. But I think I imagined that I run these movies now for everything. You know, anything and everything that I think these fear bubbles might rise up in. But I imagine that they probably only sailed far enough over the horizon so that I couldn't see the mast poking up on the yacht, and that they pulled their sails down, and that they were sat there almost looking at their watches going, oh, bless her, let's give her a few hours to try on her own, and then we'll go back and pick her up. Because I knew they didn't believe that I could make it. And actually, they had really good reason to believe that. I was the fourth boat to go solo, and those other 3 solo attempts didn't make it. And they must have looked at those guys and thought, you know, these are big, strong guys, they're good rowers, and if they can't make it, there's no way that little wifey Debra's going to make it, who's never even rowed before. But it didn't matter anymore that they didn't believe. What mattered was that I believed I could make it, and I really did believe that more than anything else. I knew the next time that I saw Andrew was going to be stood on the quayside at the finish line in Barbados. It turned out to be a really basic way of life. But I suppose there was something rather charming about that. You know, I knew nothing of the death and destruction that was going on in the world, the Iraq war at the time, because I had no knowledge of the outside world, no news. In my world, all there was utter grace and peace. Okay, it wasn't very luxurious, and it wouldn't be for everyone, because this is all there is. 2 solar panels, a little gas stove, a GPS and a compass, and a little cabin, a pod shape, it's a bit like a coffin actually, that you can get in if it's really stormy and shut the hatch, and I was safe in there. It was a really grueling routine though. I'd row for 2 hours, I'd rest for 1 hour, I'd row for 2 hours, I'd rest for 1 hour, and in my 1 hour off I only ever slept for 20 minutes at a time. So sleep deprivation became a really big part of this journey. And I think it was that, combined with the fact that it just seemed like everything was trying to kill me, that the stress really started to build up during the time I was out there, which, you know, it wasn't the 6 weeks that Andrew and I anticipated. After he left, it ended up taking me 3.5 months in the end. And the dangers really started to wear me down. You know, I worried about the whales and this constant thing about the sharks, but actually they weren't the danger. It turned out that this guy came far closer to sinking me than the whales and the sharks. He looks really harmless, doesn't he? I think because there was a lot of weed growing on the bottom of the boat, probably because I was going so slowly, that these turtles would come up underneath and they'd scrape this weed off with their beaks, and they loved eating it. But the problem was when the boat's rolling around in the swell, the boat would come rolling down onto a big turtle, and there'd be this crashing noise followed by this dreadful cracking, splitting noise. And of course, the first time I heard that, I thought he was going to come up for air and there'd be this little naked turtle next to the boat. But when he surfaced, there was nothing wrong with him. And I thought, that is the hull of my boat cracking. That's not this turtle's shell. I'm going to be sunk by a sea turtle. I mean, that's just downright embarrassing, isn't it? It's like if you get attacked by a shark, there's something quite cool about that. So I started pulling as hard as I could, and I could see this turtle behind me, like this. I cannot tell you how demoralizing it is to pull as hard as you can and have the slowest oceanic creature in the whole world keeping up with you. And it made me realize how slow I was going, that and the fact that most of the other guys had finished after 6 weeks. But also I'd had this really frustrating period where I'd row for maybe 3 days and make 20 odd miles. And then over one night, I'd have this big headwind and be pushed back 30 miles and have to start again. You know, what I just spent 3 days rowing. On top of that, there were a couple of hurricanes that seemed like they were trying to kill me. And actually, the shipping, they really tried to kill me. I tell you, they are not looking out for a woman in a rowing boat. No, they were terrifying. And if I'm honest, you know, after a couple of months of this, it wore me down. I didn't want to be out there anymore. I wanted to go home. So I wrote this diary entry, and I wrote in it really honestly how hard I was finding it and that I felt I was nearing the end of my journey. And it was being put on our team website for friends and family and supporters and sponsors to follow. And I got this phone call shortly after it went live from my twin sister, Hayley, who project manages all of my challenges. And she said, Debs, we've just read your diary. We want you to know we're not ready to give up yet. And I said, well, what do you mean you're not ready? And she said, well, it's a team effort, isn't it? And I went, no, it's not quite like that, actually, because I'm the one that's out here. And I was so angry with her. And she kept on saying, tell us the problems. We'll find you the solutions. You know, this was a big departure for me. I'm someone who doesn't accept help easily. But I learned to ask for help in this journey. And I ask for help a whole lot more now. And it's changed the way I do everything. Because, you see, they really did solve the problems. The first thing I said was, I don't want to be out here on Christmas. I want to kind of do all that stuff we normally do around Christmas time. And they said, don't worry, we're going to make Christmas happen for you. 10 days before Christmas, a yacht arrived with everything I would need on it for Christmas Day. It's the first yacht I'd seen in months, first people I'd seen in months. And, you know, it was just perfect. They'd even put in this tiny little Christmas pudding. So I stopped rowing at Christmas lunchtime, and I mean, obviously I didn't have any turkey, but I had this chicken cuppa soup. That was like my closest flavour, so I drank that, and then I ate my little Christmas pudding, and it was just brilliant. It was the most peaceful, non-commercialised, Christ-filled Christmas that I will ever have. It was joyous. They even found a way, though, to solve this problem of the loneliness. They found a way to link from the diary page on the website to iridium.com, the satellite phone company's website. And from there, anyone with a computer could send this text message via the SAT system. And you know, the week they sent that link up, I had over 1,000 text messages. And they weren't all from my mum either. You know, these were people all around the world. And they were just, some of them were really inspiring and encouraging. But a lot of them actually were just funny. I'd forgotten how to laugh. And I wanted to show you my favourite funny text message that came in response to this one that Hayley sent me. So on Christmas Day, she sent me this. We can't wait to fly out to Barbados to see you in, so pull harder. And then on Boxing Day, my brother sent this one in response. Debs, it's Matt here. Don't listen to Hayley. Row slower. The airfares get cheaper in February. But do you know what blew me away about these text messages? Is these words, they were free. They cost absolutely nothing to say. And it really challenged me about the way I use my free words, because I've got this abundant supply that I get to choose how I use every single day. And yet, how do I use them? It really challenged me to use them more positively and to use them more often. Because these free words, they were like Savlon cream, you know, they were healing, and they stopped this spread of infection that was loneliness to me out there. But it was always going to be hard to the end, because I genuinely don't think that we're designed to spend 3.5 months alone in a little rowing boat. And in those last few days when I would find myself sitting sobbing at the oars because I couldn't handle another 2-hour rowing shift, I'd say to myself, come on, Debra, start running that arrival scene movie. Because you see, in this arrival scene movie, I could see it all. I could picture it in every single detail. Andrew would be waiting there with all my family on the quayside, and he'd reach down into the boat and pick me up and give me this massive hug. And then the next thing, I'd walk up to my mum and I'd hold her, and I'd always imagine as I hugged her that I'd give her a little sniff. Because you see, my mum always wears Nivea cream on her face, so there's this certain smell about my mum always. And then I'd walk up to Hayley and I'd go through what I was going to say to her and what she might say back to me. And then my brothers, I'd think about even what they'd be wearing. Like, well, Matt had those scruffy Converse on he always wears. And what is that moment going to feel like? I mean, surely that is going to be the biggest feeling of achievement I ever have in my whole life. That has got to be worth pulling on these oars for another 2 hours. Because I wanted that, I wanted that to happen more than I've ever wanted anything to happen. And it could always keep the oars in motion. But they completely ruined it because it was nothing like the movie. I mean, not that it mattered, because that's what had got me there. And actually, this was the first time I saw them flying towards me on the front of this speedboat. And do you know what hit me in this moment? How incredibly selfish I'd been. Because I didn't once think about how hard it must have been for them. For Andrew, particularly for my mother, being the ones waiting at home. My father had died of leukemia shortly before I went on this journey, and Mum was alone for the first time in 36 years. And so this moment, when I finally got to hold her, was incredibly special. But it's at a whole different level now, because in the last 3 years, I've had 2 little girls of my own, Heidi and Molly. And now I really understand how selfish I've been. She must have lay there every night thinking, I've no idea if my daughter is dead or alive now, because she only ever used her free words positively. And I'm so grateful for that. But this was the arrival scene moment. And the weird thing about this moment is I've never once managed to put this moment into words. I think because there aren't the words to describe a moment quite that special. So rather than try and mumble my way through it, I'm going to show you a short video of what happened instead.
She crossed the finish line before dawn. In daylight, her tiny craft was dwarfed by a threatening sea. After days of often desperate loneliness, a welcome she'd never anticipated, Barbados has adopted a new heroine, and Debra couldn't contain her triumph.
To the Milky Way. Tell me, Venus, blow your mind. Was it everything you wanted to find? And then you missed me while you were looking for yourself out there.
When I'm faced with changes that I would never choose, I have found that running these movies both to burst those anxiety bubbles and running the arrival scene movies to keep me motivated have really helped, as has being prepared to ask for help and taking people's free words of encouragement, using laughter when there's nothing else left, and also having this passionate belief that I'm going to make it even when others doubt me. But if I had to pick just one thing and say this is the thing out there that I use the most and I still use every day now, it was something that Hayley said to me when I rang her up hysterical because I'd nearly been run over by a container ship. And she said, Debs, you've just got to choose your attitude about this. And I thought, if you were here now, I would punch you so hard for saying that. But I couldn't stop thinking about those 3 words, choose your attitude, because nothing else out there I had a choice about. I couldn't choose whether I got attacked by a shark or run over by a supertanker or blown backwards 50 miles, but I did have a choice about the way I responded to those things, and I clung on to it because it was like I just needed one thing that I can say, this thing out here, this is what I've got control of. So for me, it's not enough, though, just to have a nice phrase. There's so many good motivational phrases out there, but unless I can put it into some practical exercise, it doesn't work for me. So I developed this little choose your attitude exercise. And my trigger to remind me to do it was stuck on those blue arrows. Choose your attitude, it says. And I'd sit by that at breakfast time and I'd say out loud, come on, Debs, choose your attitude. Which one is it going to be today? And I'd make myself pick one. But it had to be a positive one because negative ones were banned from the boat. And so I'd come up with like, today's attitude is one of optimism or something, like that. And then the next bit of my choose your attitude exercise was I had to list all the reasons why I had to be optimistic. Like, maybe I'll do more miles on this 24 hours than I've done on any other day, or I might see some incredible marine life I haven't seen before. And genuinely, by the end of breakfast, I'd feel quite optimistic. Because you see, I had a trigger to remind me to do it. I don't have the boat anymore, so I've got new triggers now, depending on where I'm working. If I drive to work, when I lock my car and press the key fob, it goes beep, beep. And when I hear that noise, that's my trigger to ask myself the question, come on, Debs, which one is it today? And to go through my choose your attitude exercise. Because I believe it made that much difference out there. And I suppose I can't help believe that of everyone. So let me ask you, what would your trigger be? Because I'm convinced, absolutely convinced, that when it comes to dealing with changes that we'd never choose, if we can choose the right attitude, there is real hope and the possibility to achieve even the biggest of hurdles. Thanks very much.